On this video, I'm going to discuss 7 mindset shifts that have made me millions and millions of dollars. Um, there's no doubt in my mind that if you adapt and adopt these mindset shifts, that they will change your life for the better. I heard someone say a long time ago, if you want to model any form of human excellence, if somebody's doing something and you'd like to do it, you find somebody who's doing the thing you want to do, and you model 3 things. 1, you model their belief systems. 2, you model their mental syntax, the order in which they fire off messages in their brain. And number 3, you model their physiology. And so this is going to be about belief systems that if you adapt and adopt them, they will make you millions. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're not making millions of dollars, some of these are going to rub you the wrong way. Because if these things already made sense to you, you'd already be doing them, right? I mean, doesn't that stand to reason? Don't expect to learn something from someone that you agree with 100% of the time. Of course, if they're not challenged, if what they're saying is not challenging you, how could you possibly hope for it to change you? So here are the 7 mindset shifts. The first one is the biggest mind-blown transformation that changed my life for the rest of my life. And I'm going to say it and you're going to say, oh no, not that again. Okay. But here's the problem. If that's what you're thinking, here's the problem. You know about it and you think knowing about it is knowing it. Right? So you like the words I'm going to say, you've already heard them. You already know them. They're not new words. They're just new actions. They're words that you've heard and recited, but you haven't yet done anything about them. So here it is. First, game changer, multi-million, billion, whatever dollar mindset is be, do, have. You're like, oh yeah, I got that already. Be, do, have. Yeah, okay. Sure you do. But I'm going to go over here on my trusty blackboard. When I discovered this in Genesis chapter 1, it knocked my socks off for months. I was just like, and when I think about it now, it still knocks my socks off. Because in Genesis chapter 1, God set up the whole thing. I'm getting chills thinking about this right now. God set up the whole thing. And the first thing God tells us about God is that he is creative. He doesn't tell us first that he's love. He doesn't tell us first that he's righteous or just or omnipotent, omniscient, even though he's all those things. The first thing God tells us about God is that he's creative. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And when God created the heavens and the earth in the beginning, he established the platform on which we operate. And that platform is in the beginning. That's time. I don't like that color. I don't even know what color it is, but I know I don't like it for that. So in the beginning, before the beginning, there was no time. In the beginning, God created the heavens, that's space, and the earth, that's matter. Now it's really interesting that I need to do some thinking about this, but it's really interesting that time, space, and matter are a continuum, and they all had to come into being at the same time. The only explanation for that is Genesis 1:1. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'aretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's the only. So they all came into being at the same time. Because if there's time but no space, where would you put it? What would you do with that time? If there's space but no time, when would you put it? If there's matter but I said earth. If there's matter but no space, where would you put it? And so they all came into being at the same time. Now, what's fascinating about this is this platform is the platform that God set up from the beginning. These are our constraints as human beings. Time, space, and matter are our constraints. Anything you're going to do is going to take time, right? Anything you're going to become is going to take time. Like time it's a constraint, space. If you don't have enough time, you're not going to get it done. If you don't have enough space, you're not going to get it done. Like we can't build the Empire State Building inside this building because there's not enough space, right? And what's really, really mind-blowing about this again is that the first thing that God tells us about himself is that he's creative. The first thing God tells us about us is that he made us in his image. He made us in his image. which means this is the first thing he tells us about us. He made us to make stuff, and he created us to create stuff, which is why if you're not making something, if you're not creating something, if you are not living in your creative space to make the world a better place, you feel unfulfilled. You feel like I'm wasting my life. I'm just existing because you're not creating anything, right? And so the first thing God tells about us is that he made us in his image. And then the first thing God said to man, go read Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 and 28. And it says, and God blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion. So he said, be fruitful. Now, the word fruitful, Genesis 1 tells us what a fruit is. A fruit is a living organism whose seed is in itself. So when God said, be fruitful, he's telling us to produce on the outside based on what he put on the inside of us. What did he put on the inside of us? I believe that God planted the seed of an aspect of his creativity inside of all of us. Now, he didn't plant the same aspect inside of any of us. He planted a different aspect of the seed of his creativity inside of each of us so that you can create something based on the creativity that God put in you that helps me, and I can create something based on the creativity God put inside of me to help you. It's so beautiful. So I need you. So now, not only is it a good idea for me to treat you good because you're made in the image of God, but it's a good idea for me to treat you good or for me to treat you well because it's in my own best interest. Because you're going to have something I need. So it just makes sense for me to treat you well and you to treat me well because I got something you need and you got something I need. So it just makes sense. Why would we go through life burning the bridges of the people who have the stuff that we need that we don't have and we can't get without them? So he said, be fruitful, produce on the outside based on what I put on the inside of you. And then he said, multiply. Well, the implied verb of multiply is a do. Multiply means to increase, by the way. So he said, be fruitful and increase. So multiply. And by the way, the increase of multiplication is not geometric. It's not linear. It's exponential. It's a geometric progression. What did Warren Wiersbe say? Any fool can count the number of seeds in an apple, but only God can count the number of apples in a seed. If you plant a seed, it doesn't grow an apple. If you plant an apple seed, it grows a tree. And the tree produces apples. And all those apples have multiple seeds, and everything is multiplying. Are y'all tracking? Okay. So be fruitful, do multiply. Multiply is what we do. Increase. Replenish the earth. Replenish is what we do. Replenish means to fill up the earth. So I'm supposed to use my creativity to make stuff, to be fruitful and do things that make things that fill up the earth. Okay. And then he said, and subdue it. Why did he say subdue it? Because there's a principle that's woven into the fabric of physics. We call it entropy, right? What is entropy? Anything left to itself tends to move more and more towards disorder, right? The first law of thermodynamics is what? Everything is energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes form, right? So you take the apple and you eat the apple and you plant the seed becomes a tree, and the tree becomes more apples, and the apples produce more, and nothing goes away. It just turns into something different. But the second law is the law of entropy. Anything left to itself tends to move more and more towards disorder. So in order for me to do, it requires intention and it requires energy. Are y'all tracking? I thought I was going to do 7. Okay, that's hilarious. Okay, so be fruitful, do multiply, do subdue. Well, because of the law of entropy, it's woven into the fabric of the universe and when I say it's woven into the fabric of the universe, God wove it into the fabric of the universe, because the universe is not God and God is not the universe. It's God wove it into the fabric of the universe that disruption always follows intention. So when you decide to do something good that you haven't been doing, the first thing that shows up is not something fun. The first thing that shows up is not a big payoff. The first thing that shows up is difficulty. Isn't it fascinating that you have to plant food, but you don't have to plant weeds? They just grow. I've never met a farmer who planted a weed, but they all have them. Never met a gardener who planted a weed, right? It's so mind blowing. Like if you're building a new house and you want to have a yard, you got to go buy some sod, right? You go buy some sod and it's got like St. Augustine grass, or it's got whatever kind of grass you have in your area, and you plant that. You put down that sod, and then you water it, and then you take care of it. And next thing you know, now you got a yard. Next thing you know, dollar weeds start popping up. Where'd they come from? Disruption always follows intention. It's so fascinating that part of our energy we use to produce, and another part of our energy we use to keep the entropy from seducing what we've produced. Like, what in the world is happening here? Okay, so do, and then God says, have dominion. Have dominion. Now, here's the formula. Be, do, have. But this part of the formula, be, was created for the platform of time. So this is the platform. And these are the parameters. And the parameters are be, do, have. This parameter was made for this part of the platform. Anything you're going to become that you are not right now takes time. And see, so many people are in such a big hurry that I tried that already for 3 whole weeks and it didn't work. Right? Isn't that what people say stuff? Like, what are we talking about? I was having a conversation with one of my clients last night. And she asked me a very valid question. She said, Myron, like, in corporate America, we're taught not to talk about how much money we make, but in your business, you talk about how much money you make. Like, how do you keep employees? That's you've asked that question before, Trudy, right? That's a valid question. But see, here's what people don't realize. What people don't realize is the money that I make now is not from the work I do now. The money that I make now is from the work I did when the work was only working on me. The money that I make now is from the gestation period that lasted for decades. And for somebody to come into my space and believe that they deserve a big chunk of this pie just because they're here and they are helping and the work that they do is valid. That's not, my point is not that the work they do is not valid. It's very valid. But somebody who's been here for 5 years, they think, well, I deserve more money because look how much money you're making. But I'm not making this much money because you showed up. I was making this much money before you showed up. And so anything you're going to become is going to take time. And see, people want to rush the washing machine. People come and see something. Even those of clients. I've got clients. They come and see, I'm going to go do what Myron did. Really? Really? You're going to spend decades learning and decades trial and error. And in the beginning, more error than trial. And you're going to last through that learning curve to the point where something finally clicks that you can put on rinse and repeat. See, and most people, when they don't get the result when I started in sales, I didn't make my first sale for 1.5 years, for 18 months. But I kept doing it. Why? Because I didn't have any place else to go. I didn't have alternatives. Sometimes our biggest problem is we have too many choices. Yes. Yes. Right? There's so much opportunity in the world today, you can do shiny object syndrome until the cows come home and never make anything work. Why? Because you think the problem is the opportunity, but the problem's not the opportunity, the problem's the opportunist. One more time. So be, do, have. God, I love this so much. Somebody said to me on comment on one of my, brother, don't get distracted by the money and forget about Jesus. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. As if it's somehow separate. What are we talking about? Don't forget about Jesus. Jesus is the reason I'm here. I'm not confused. But I'm not going to step on the brakes on my productivity because I don't want to not be focused on Jesus. What are you talking about, bro? You're pretending to be focused on Jesus, but you're working 13 hours a day and struggling to take care of your family. And you're acting like because I'm making more money, somehow that means I'm more focused on money. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm way less focused on money than most people. I'm more focused on time. Fascinating discovery. This is 1B. One of the biggest differences between poor people and rich people is poor people value money more than they value time. And rich people value time more than we value money. Poor people value money more than they value time. That's why they're cheap. No, they're not cheap. I'm not saying they're cheap. I'm saying they'll go to a restaurant, church folk, go to a restaurant on Sunday afternoon, sit there for 5 hours and leave $1 tip in a trap. That's called an anti-witness. Okay. So we have to understand that my desire, your desire to have something nice, to have nice experience of life, your desire to have like a nice car and a nice house and live in a nice neighborhood, take nice vacations and have a nice sized bank account, that desire, God gave it to you. God's the one that gave you a desire for nicer, better, because the first command was be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, and have dominion. God commanded the man to be progressively productive in his life, his whole life. Your desire to make today look better than yesterday, and this week look better than last week, and this month look better than last month, and this year look better than last year, and this decade look better than last decade is God-given. And Satan wants you to believe that it's satanic. See, Satan, one of his tactics is to make you believe that your friends are your enemies and your enemies are your friends. Remember what he said to Eve in the garden? You shall not surely die, for God doth know that they eat thereof. Then your eyes will be open and you should be as gods knowing good and evil. What's he saying? He's saying God's just keeping something from you. God's just trying to keep you from being like him. So you want to do something really good for your life? Stop attending Satan's Bible studies. What does that even mean? Stop attending Satan's Bible studies. If you make the mistake of thinking that everybody who talks about the Bible is representing God, you are delusional. The very first temptation in the history of the world, Satan used what God said to deceive. He twisted what God said to deceive Eve in the garden. He also twisted in the first temptation of Christ, he twisted what God said to attempt to deceive Jesus. But Jesus is the truth, and the truth cannot be deceived. Okay, so your desire to have is God-given. So God said, I'm going to give these people an intense desire to have. And then I'm going to tell them, I'm going to give them some principles and laws that these are the things you must do in order for you to have what you want to have. So having speaks to my property. I'm going to stop on this one for this mindset shift. Having speaks to my property. Doing speaks to my activity. So God knew that when I attempted to do something that I don't have an ability to do, I would become frustrated. I'd feel challenged. I would feel insignificant and insufficient. But the reason he did that was not to frustrate us, but to get us to yield to the thing he cares about most. We care the most about this, and so we do a lot of this. God cares the most about this. And while we're ignoring this, we can't do this, and we'll never have that. God cares the most about us becoming. Being speaks to my identity. And when I yield to who God says I am, when I recognize that I am who God says I am, so it doesn't matter. So if I am so intimately familiar with who God says I am, then your misunderstanding of me is not my concern. People it's so funny. So I have been called a prosperity gospel preacher. Myron, are you a prosperity gospel preacher? I don't know. What do you mean by that? That would be my question. If you mean, do I believe in biblical prosperity? 100% I do. Because prosperity is a Bible word. In fact, I remember reading something that says something like, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of waters, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Now, whatsoever he doeth shall prosper sounds relatively all-inclusive. I don't know. Whatsoever he doeth shall prosper? That means when he does it, it works. Let me ask you a question. How many Bible-believing, Bible-thumping, church-going people do you know who are actually living that? Yeah, so if that's what you mean by prosperity gospel preacher, the word gospel means good news. And the good news about prosperity is you can be prosperous. Now, but if you mean, am I telling you to give me money and God's going to bless you? No, I don't do that. I don't have any blessings for sale. No, I'll tell you right now, if you give me some money, God might bless you. And then again, maybe he won't. I don't know. Tell you what, you want to give me some money, you give me the money, and then you come back and tell me what happened after that. I don't know. I don't have any blessings for sale. I'm not going to make you a promise that God's going to do something for you because you gave me some money. I don't do that. Hi. I've been called a false prophet. That's interesting. That's an interesting accusation. But guess what? I don't have time to care. I have been called the Antichrist. Now, I know. Antichrist. What? Child, please. Okay. It's so fascinating how super religious people get their doctrine from loud sermons. Go read the Bible. Go study it. First of all, you might come across, if you read the whole Bible, you might come across a passage that says something like this: the servant of the Lord shall not strive. You might find that one in there. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. Be ye kind one to another, tenderhearted. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in there that tells about our attitude. Anyway, okay. See, here's what I know. If I am made in the image of God, and God planted the seed of an aspect of his creativity inside of me, that means I know I can do anything he tells me to do. God tells me as a man that I'm supposed to love my family. I'm supposed to love my wife. I'm supposed to provide for my house. I'm supposed to leave an inheritance to my children's children. I can't say, well, leave an inheritance to your children's children and other impossible dreams. I can't say that. Ladies, God gives you a template for how to be like the most valuable woman ever in Proverbs chapter 31. And you know what Christians do? They'll write books like the Proverbs 31 woman and other impossible dreams. So what you say about what God said is more valid than what God said about what God said. It's so fascinating. All we have to do is yield to being who God called us, created us, and then called us to be. That's all I gotta do. Okay, if I will become more, I will have the ability to do more. And if I do more, I automatically deserve to have more. So that's the first mindset shift. Okay, we only got 6 more to go. The next one that shifted my existence was kind of based on the same passage, and it's this one. The 4 levels of value. The lowest level of value is implementation. Down here, you use your muscles over time to make money. Wealth is a spiritual attribute. Wealth is spiritual. In fact, poverty is always the result of spiritual warfare. Always. There are no exceptions to that. Man lacked nothing until Satan attacked in the garden and man believed Satan's word over God's word. Poverty is always the result of spiritual warfare. Okay. So implementation is the lowest level of value. Wealth is not money. Wealth is my ability to create value for someone other than me. And if the only thing I have to use to create value for someone other than me is my muscles over time, the amount of wealth I'm going to create is going to be limited. Are y'all tracking? If you go to a hotel, I don't care if you're paying $2,300 a night for a hotel room. The people who make the least amount of money working at that hotel are the housekeeping staff. Nobody wants to stay in a dirty hotel room. Like, we ain't having it, right? Find a piece of hair in the sink. You go down, my sink is dirty, right? Without housekeeping staff, you can't have a hotel. And yet they get paid the least. Why? They don't get paid the least because of what they do is not valuable. What they do is immensely valuable, but it's on the lowest level of value. The level of value that they work on has a ceiling. Are y'all tracking? So the next lowest level of value is unification. On this level, We use management skills to make money. And if you're managing other people, that is a higher spiritual activity than doing the thing yourself. Oh, now I get it. So managers make more than the people they manage, even though the people they manage are doing more of the work itself than the manager. On the unification level, like there's limitations. On the low end, you might make $80,000 a year. On the high end, or you might make $250,000 a year. But there's a ceiling. You can't create wealth doing this. You can create wealth while you're down here. You can create wealth if you're down here, if you do the right things with your money. But you won't be creating the wealth because of this or because of that. Are y'all tracking? Wealth begins to be created above this line. And this is where wealth begins to be created. Communication. Use your mouth to make money. 2 caveats. Number 1, you must have a mouth. Congratulations, all of you are in the catbird seat right now. Number 2, you have to learn how to use that mouth effectively to communicate messages that move the masses and have conversations that create cash flow. So, the highest level is imagination. Now, I've often said, I got this from Genesis chapter 1. And I know people are saying, well, that ain't in Genesis chapter 1. I didn't see that in Genesis chapter 1. So I'm going to tell you what I saw. Here's what it says. And God said, let us make man in our image. So in order for God to say, let us make man in our image, what had to exist before God could say that? The image. Imagination. Image is the root word for imagination. So God made man to have an imagination. And then it says, and God said, what's that? Communication. God didn't say, let me make man in my image. He said what? Let us make man in our image. Unification. The last thing it says in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, it says, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground. That's implementation. Our body is the lowest part of us. By the way, did you know that that's why? That's why we use, like animals, when they go eat, they lower their face to their food. Why? Because the body is, in it is what it is. A horse is a horse is a horse, of course. When humans eat, we put our food on a plate and then we use utensils to lift the food to our head. You know what that's a picture of? That this part of me is giving a sacrifice to this part of me. It's a picture. So this right here changed my life. When I said, I'm done spending most of my time, I'm not done down here. I still do stuff down here, but I spend 80% of my work is up. 80% of my work is up here, and only 20% max is down here. Game changer. I don't like talking. Okay, cool. Keep cutting the grass. Keep washing the car. Keep fixing your car. Right? Keep cleaning the hotel. I didn't put this in there. Okay, so 4 levels of value. Next one, I'm just going to do this one really quickly. It's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time. That changed my life. It's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time. I don't care what your definition of a lot of money is. I don't care what your definition of a little bit of time is. But let me put it in like 2025 language. It's easier to make $100,000 a month than it is to make $100,000 a year. It's easier to make $100,000 a week than it is to make $100,000 a month. It's easier to make $100,000 in a day than it is to make $100,000 in a week. And it's easier to make $100,000 in an hour than it is to make $100,000 in a day. And I know all of those are true because I've done all of them and I'm not bragging. And I've shown other people how to do all of those and they've, like, it's not a Myron thing. It's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time. Your problem is not that that's not true for you. Your problem is that you don't know how to believe it. Because if you believed it, you would do the same thing I did when I discovered it. And you know what I did? I made a decision. Once I became aware of this, because all transformation are 6 levels of transformation: awareness, intention, decision, discipline, recognition, and celebration. And so when I became aware of the fact that it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time, I made a decision. I set an intention and made a decision. And my intention was, I'm not doing the hard stuff to make a little bit of money anymore. I'm done. I'm done. I made a decision. And when I made that decision, I had enough discipline to stick to it. I'm not going to look at any of the hard ways to make a little bit of money. And you know what happens when you do that? How much is a little and how much is a lot changes. Somebody will call me, hey, Myron, I got this great way to make $50,000. I don't want to have a conversation with you about making $50,000. Because to me, not because I'm all that in the bag, like, that's not a good use of my time. But it's not because I'm all that. It's just because this awareness has shifted everything for me. And it'll shift everything for you if you can just get yourself to believe it. Okay. And so, it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time. I've got 4 more. This is crazy. What happened to all that time? Okay. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing wonderful. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do a part 2. I've entitled this video Escaping the Rat Race because so many people feel trapped in a cycle that feels extremely unproductive. And I'm going to share with you some principles that I've discovered that help me escape the rat race. And this is a continuation of a video that you saw the first part of last week, if you saw it, like the video we released last week. Because right now, while you're watching this, I am on vacation. Okay. And so, but I've given this video a different title, Escape the Rat Race, and I'm going to give you the last 4 mindsets that have made me millions of dollars. We talked about mindsets that make millions on the video last week. Well, these are the final 4 of those mindsets that make millions. So, the first one from last week was be, do, have, and you go watch the video if you don't know what I mean by that. The second one was the 4 levels of value, and the third one was it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time. The next one is nothing is expensive, right? Nothing is expensive. And I was listening to a Jim Rohn audio series a long time ago, and he said to his mentor, Mr. Earl Shoaff, he said, Mr. Shoaff, he said, I can't buy that because it's too expensive. He said his mentor said to him, it's not too expensive, Mr. Rohn. You can't afford it. And the difference is, if it's too expensive, the problem is it. And you can't fix it. But if you can't afford it, the problem is you, and you can fix you. You're the only person who can fix you. And obviously, when I talk about fixing you, I'm talking about your habits, right? I'm not talking about, you get it. So nothing's expensive. Everything just costs what it costs. In fact, there are things you buy right now that there was a time in your life when you felt like they were expensive. They were too expensive. So when I had a poverty mindset, I used to my whole life was figuring out, how can I get it for less? 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 And I remember my brother Rob. He went off to the Marine Corps, and we grew up really, really poor. Like there was 9 of us in our house, unless my parents brought some of our cousins to live with us for the summer, and then there might have been 13 or 14 of us, right? And we never lived in mansions or anything. And my parents worked hard, but it was a struggle to feed 7 sons, and then sometimes their cousins. And so I learned how to take something that was not enough and make it do. My dad called that Mr. Make Do. I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Make Do. You just find what you need and you make it do, right? You find what you can find and make it do. And so my whole mentality growing up was, okay, we would buy cheap cars and then we'd spend hours and hours working on them, changing the transmission, changing the engine, fixing it. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've lived that life, right? And it wasn't a bad experience. It was just my experience. A lot of times we think of things in the past that were difficult and painful. And it wasn't even painful, but we think of things that are difficult and painful as being bad. They weren't bad. They were part of your preparation for your assignment. Anyway, so I would buy raggedy cars. In fact, my very first business I didn't even realize it was a business, was when I came home for the summer from after my first year in college, and I bought a car for $50 from the Paxton Herald in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I drove it around all summer, and then I sold it for $300 before I went back to college, right? And I made $250 profit on that car. Well, the business that I started was I started buying old raggedy cars, fixing them up and selling them, right? And so if I was going to buy a house, I wanted to get the cheapest rent I could get. And if that meant I had to spend months working on the house, then I would spend months renovating the house for the person who owned the house so I could live in the house and only pay $150 a month for rent, or $250 a month for rent, or $300 for rent, right? So I would get the house for as little as I could and do as much work as I had to make that work, right? I remember the very first house that I bought was a 5-bedroom brick row house in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, 636 Emerald Street. And I bought it at the tax sale because there's a sale in every county. They have a tax sale. They have a judicial sale and a municipal sale. Municipal sale. I think they're what it's called. Well, when you buy a house on the tax sale for the judicial sale, you don't have to pay off the old taxes. You just buy the house and you own it free and clear. And so, but you go to an auction and there are other people bidding on this house. And so I had like 7 houses that I was going to bid on, right? And I didn't have a ton of money. I had a job, so I had a few $1,000s. And so I go to this house, and I had a couple houses, and some of the houses I looked at, I wasn't really crazy about, but I was willing to bid on them. And then people were like running these things up into the thousands of dollars. I'm like, I'm not going to get a house today, right? And so then 636 Emerald Street, whatever the lot number was, blah, 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 it came up and said, can I get a bid for $200? Can I get a bid for $200? Because they started all the bids at $200. Can I get a bid for $200? Nobody said anything. And I'm like, I know how to negotiate. I'm not going to be in a hurry, because then people are going to start like, can I get a bid for $200? I waited until he said it about 4 times, and I'm like, I'll give you a bid for $200. Like, I didn't want anybody to see my hand. I didn't go, I'm like, he said, I got 200, can I get 250? I got 200, can I get 250? I got 200, can I get 250? Sold for $200. I bought that house for $200. That was my first house. I spent years renovating that house, which is okay, but that's what I knew how to do. That was the first house I ever bought. I spent $200 on that house because I thought buying a house the regular way, it was too expensive. But it wasn't too expensive. I just couldn't afford it. And the reason I couldn't afford it was because of the way that I was thinking about money, and the way that I was thinking about money as it relates to me, and the way that I thought, the things that I thought you had to do to make a lot of money, I wasn't good at any of them, I thought. Are y'all tracking? I thought I wasn't good at any of them. I was actually good at some of them. I just didn't know I was good, and I didn't know the things I was good at could make you money. It's so interesting how we all have scotomas. We all have blind spots. And I had some blind spots that were like, I don't know. And so that was the first house I bought. Well, the last house I just bought was $2.4 million. That's way more expensive than $200. So what happened? Did houses change? Did the housing market change? Yeah, houses got more expensive. So nothing is really expensive. Everything costs what it costs. Like, it amazes me that people obsess over the price of gas. And they know they have to put gas in their car anyway. What difference does it make? What difference does it make how much it costs? I'm not saying that because, and I know some of you are going to say, oh, that sounds like a snooty rich person. No. I'm just saying, when I was poor, I didn't obsess over the price of gas. Why? I knew I had to put it in my car anyway. I was either going to put it in my car or wear out my sneakers, right? Those are my choices. And so nothing is expensive. I just have to, if I want to be able to afford things that I desire to have, I have to learn how to think better, right? And if I learn how to think better, then I will be able to afford whatever I desire to afford. In fact, by the time you watch this video, you can go back to a video that I released as a live on July 14th, 2025, called Money Traps. And I break down how, for rich people, everything costs the same amount. It doesn't matter if I'm buying a bottle of water, a pair of shoes, a car, a house, or a private island, it all costs the same amount. So if you want to go back and watch that video, okay, from July 14th, 2025, as a live. Go watch that. It's called Money Traps. Okay, cool. So nothing is expensive. So that was a mindset shift. So all I had to do was figure out then, I didn't have to figure out how to make it cost less. All I had to do was figure out a way that I could afford it. And then it didn't matter. Does that make sense, everyone? Yes? Okay, so that one changed my life. Nothing's expensive. And so, by the way, The reason that's such an important thing is because if I say it costs too much, what I'm doing is I'm making a dead-end statement. But I can change that. I can change the dead-end statement. In fact, I don't have. What if I never said it costs too much again, or it's too expensive, or what if I never even said I can't afford it again? Instead of making a dead-end statement, let's ask an open-door question. Would y'all like to know what an open-door question is? Yes? Instead of saying it's too expensive, or it costs too much, or I can't afford it, what if I said, how can I afford this? And if I apply the principles you talked about on the video from last week, be, do, have, who do I have to be to afford this? What do I have to do to afford this? Oh, that's so helpful. Who do I have to become so I can afford this? What do I have to do so that I can afford this? Cool. Okay, so nothing's expensive. We got that one. Then this one shook me to my core. So I don't know what happens to you when you're reading a book and you come across a word and you don't know the definition. I don't know what happens to you. Well, I know you probably yawn. Most people yawn. I don't know if you know. Just pay attention to that next time you read a book and you come across a word that you don't know the definition. You'll go, like your brain's looking for some oxygen, right? Okay. Maybe you feel like you're drowning in confusion. I don't know, but I yawn. But what I do when I come across a word that I don't know what it means, I go look it up. Why? Because if I don't know what that word means, I can't understand anything that comes after it. Are y'all tracking? And so I go look up the word. And so I was watching a video on YouTube, and it was like a 5, maybe 7-minute video. Dr. Jordan B. Peterson starts talking about Price's Law. I'm like, Price's Law? I've never heard of that before. Price's Law? What is that? And this professor, Professor Derek Price, he discovered this principle, and he discovered that it's true across the board. And I'm going to show it to you on the board here in a minute. But I'm like, what is he talking about? What does this mean? And what does this mean to me? Like, what can I do with this information? Because, like, I mean, knowing a cool principle is nice, but having something to apply it to is better. Like, when I learn something new, my first question is, how can I use this? How can I use this? How can I use this, right? How can I use this? Like, how can I apply this to my life and make my life better, right? And so here's I'm going to state Price's Law, and then I'm going to illustrate it on my trusty digital blackboard. So here's what Price's Law states. Price's Law states that 50% of the production of any domain is produced by the square root of that domain. Now, he said so many words that I had to think about in that sentence. I mean, so many. 50%, got that. Of the production, got that. Of any domain, okay, I think I got that, is produced by the square root. The square root of that domain? What is that? What in the world are we talking about right now? Well, here's what we're talking about. In fact, I'm gonna go draw it for you because this is so cool. This is so cool. This is one of the coolest things I've ever learned. And for the purpose of high achievement, it's one of the coolest things I've ever learned. Okay, so he said it doesn't matter if it's a garden, if it's a sports team, if it's a sales team, if it's a business, if it's a country. It doesn't matter. If it's a family, it doesn't matter. 50% of the production of any domain is produced by the square root of that domain. Okay, so what that means is if you have 4 tomato plants, the square root of 4 is 2. So the 4 is 2 square. Square, when you square a number, you're multiplying that number times itself, right? So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 is 2 square. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 is 3 square. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 is 4 square. Y'all get it? Okay. So 50% of the production of any domain is produced by the square root of that domain, which tells, because 2 is the smallest whole number that you can square that it changes into a different number. Like 1 times 1 is only 1. Right? Okay, so 2 times 2 is 4. So that means if you have 4 tomato plants, or salespeople, or businesses, it doesn't matter. If you have 4, in fact, I'm going to do this. I'm going to move these down. There, that makes it better. Okay, so it doesn't matter what arena they're in. If you have 4, half of the production is going to be produced by 2 of the whole domain, right? Like if you have 4 tomato plants, 2 of the tomato plants are going to produce half the tomatoes. If you have 4 salespeople, 2 of the salespeople are going to produce half of the sales and make half of the commissions. If you have 4 businesses, two of the businesses are going to produce the gross domestic product of whatever that area is. Okay, cool. That makes perfect sense because 2 is half of 4. But when the numbers get bigger, it stops making sense. And this is why this like messed with me for weeks. And maybe you are not as weird as I am. But that messed with me for weeks because if I change the square root to 3, then the square becomes 9. So if I have 9 tomato plants, 9 salespeople, 9 businesses, half of the production is going to be produced by 3. So if I've got, let's call it salespeople, you're all entrepreneurs or would be entrepreneurs. If you got 9 salespeople, 3 salespeople are going to make half of the commissions. The other 6 people are going to have to split the other half. What? If you have 3 businesses in a town, 9 businesses in a town, 3 of them are going to produce half of the production, half of the wealth, half of the money of that town. The other 6 businesses have to split the rest. Are y'all seeing why this is such a challenge? Okay, then what happens when we get to a bigger number? Let's go to 10. Let's go to 10 squared. 10 squared is 100. If you have 100 salespeople, 50% of the commission is made by 10 people. Now this is starting to get ridiculous. Isn't it? Basketball players, golfers, baseball players, football players, musicians. It's across the board. You'll see that it's true in a minute. Like I'm getting chills thinking about this. Like when I name those different categories and I think about how many people there are who are at the top of the top of the top of the top, it's always very small. And see, and so this is one of the ways we know that when the government says they're going to solve income inequality, they're lying. Because income is the result of productivity. And if you don't fix productivity inequality, you can't fix income inequality. Are y'all tracking? Okay. So what happens when it becomes 100? 100 times 100 is 10,000. This is crazy. What are we talking about here? We're talking about if you have a big business like Century 21, like Prudential, like MetLife, you have a big company that sells like across the country or across the world. If you got 10,000 salespeople, 100 salespeople make half of the commissions. Does that wreck your mind? And then here's what wrecks my mind too. So now we got 9,900. We got to apply Price's law to that too. And then it happens again. And then when whatever's left over, we apply it to that again. And it happens again. And it keeps happening. This is absolute bananas. Right? So, but how about this? There are 30 million businesses in the United States. 30 million businesses. You know what that means? That means that half of the gross domestic product of the United States of America is produced by the square root of 30 million, which I think is 5,477. 5,477 businesses produce half of the wealth in the whole country of the United States of America. And if you don't believe me, think about it. How many Facebooks, Googles, Apples, et cetera, are there that make trillions of dollars? There's a handful of companies that make trillions, another bigger handful that make billions, and then when you start getting down to hundreds of millions and tens of millions, the numbers just keep getting smaller. Now, why is this so significant? This has to mean something practically. Doesn't it? It has to mean something practically. So then this is why it messed me up for at least weeks, maybe months. Like, what can I do with this information? Well, here's what it means. Here's what I discovered from this practically. You ready? Here's the brain breaker, the mind blower. Y'all ready? Mediocrity scales exponentially. Think about that. Being average, being mediocre is something that scales exponentially. Mediocrity scales exponentially, but excellence only scales incrementally. What? Is that crazy town? That's why you only have like one Michael Jordan. Or you got when Michael Jordan was in the league, you got Michael Jordan, you got Larry Bird, you got Magic Johnson, you got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You have a handful of people out of hundreds of basketball players that are considered to be among the best in the world. Like you have the all-star team, and then you have everybody else. I'm a golfer, so I think about golf. There are only maybe maybe two golfers that I know of, maybe two, maybe three golfers that have ever won more than 10 majors out of the thousands of professional golfers that have ever been. Now, you know what that means? By the way, that probably sounds discouraging to some of you until you remember something else that Jim Rohn said. Are y'all ready? There's plenty of room at the top. It's the bottom that's crowded. Average and ordinary has way more competition than excellence. Let this change your game forever. So I have to ask, then I start asking myself the question, okay, who do I have to become? What do I have to do to be one of the fantastic few and not be one of the mediocre many? And then I focus on those things. Because if this is true for people, it's also true for the activities of those people. So you take 10 things that you're doing, not 10 things. You take 100 things that you're doing, 100 things that you're doing right now, 10 of them are producing half of your results. What? If you take 9 things that you're doing right now, 6 of them are pretty much unnecessary. 6 of them, 3 of them are producing half of your results. We can focus on, like, if we will take inventory of our activities, we can figure out what's the square root that's producing half our results and focus most of our attention on that. And then we take the other 6 things that are left over, and then we square root that, and we figure out which things in that are causing most of the results in that part, and then we get rid of it. And you can optimize your life, you can optimize your business, because mediocrity scales exponentially, but excellence only scales incrementally. Okay, cool. Now, what's the next one? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. If you want to, we're talking about mindsets that make millionaires. Calculate the cost of inaction every time you calculate the cost of action. See, most people know how much it costs if they do what? Whatever. But they don't know how much it costs if they don't. Wow. I think about, yeah, I got time to tell you this because I only have one more. I think about back in 2001 when I did this event in Waco, Texas, and I invited this guy named Jerry to come and speak at my event. And Jerry had been in the business of speaking for 15 years. I was just getting started. And I let Jerry speak at my event. He made an offer. Jerry made some sales. He made 10 times as much as I did. Okay, because that was my first event. I did $350 in sales. Jerry did $3,500 in sales. And there were only like 35 people there. I'm like, what just happened? And so Jerry says, hey, when you come to Dallas tomorrow, let's have lunch before you fly back home. I said, okay, cool. So we go to lunch. He spends 2 hours breaking down the speaking business to me. And then he said something that sounded crazy to me. He said, oh, don't worry about it, man. I got lunch. I said, oh, no, sir. No, sir. You ain't going to teach me how to make $1 million and buy my lunch? No, we ain't doing that. I got lunch. And I asked him about that a few years later. I said, Jerry, do you remember when you offered to buy my lunch that day? He said, yeah, that was a test. He said, if you would have let me buy your lunch that day, I wouldn't have had anything else to do with you. Because I would have realized you're a taker and not a giver. It's like, oh, he was giving me a test and even tell me I was taking it. At least in school they tell you you're taking tests. But in life doesn't tell you when you're taking a test. And that day changed my life because Jerry took an interest in me. Now, I paid him for some of his trainings and he taught me a whole bunch of stuff, but that changed my life because I took action and didn't let him buy my lunch. It changed my life. If there's something you can do to make your life better, and the only thing it's going to cost you is money, and you say no because of the price, you are saying no to opportunities in the future that are so bright, if you had access to them, you'd have to sleep with sunglasses on. but we calculate the cost of action, but we don't calculate the cost of inaction. By the way, when you're selling, if you're an entrepreneur and you sell, if you show people how much it costs if they say yes, but you don't show them how much it costs if they say no, you've done them a disservice. How many of y'all are tracking? I could name dozens of people, clients of mine, who, if I named them, you would know them, who've done millions of dollars in revenue in a day. But in order for them to do millions of dollars in revenue in a day, I taught them how to do that. So they had to pay me tens of thousands of dollars. Some of them paid me hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not saying that because I have something for you to buy from me for hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars today. I mean, I have stuff, but that's not why I'm talking about it. But if they would have said no to tens of thousands of dollars, I've got dozens of people that would have cost them $1 million day. So make sure you know the cost of inaction as much as you know the cost of action. Because sometimes action costs thousands, but inaction costs millions. Okay, here's the last thing I'm going to cover in this video, just for the sake of time, and because I think it'll change your life. Okay. This is a mindset that will change everything for you. Ask yourself this question. Every time you have an expense, every time you have something you pay for, ask yourself this question. How can I turn this expense into a profit center? How can I turn this expense into a profit center? I'm going to give you an example. So I just bought a house, and I told you I paid $2.4 million for this house. So $2.4 million is relatively significant to some, not as significant to others, right? But it's a fairly sizable sum of money for a place to live, right? Okay, so one of the things, we're having the house renovated right now, so we're putting a few $100,000 more into the renovations, which is kind of crazy, but it is what it is. But the reason I'm telling you that is, like, how can I'm going to live in this house, right? I'm going to live in the house. I'm not going to rent it out for Airbnb, right? So I'm not going to do masterminds there. Like, I'm not going to have clients come to my house. I'm not doing that. So how can I turn my house into a profit center? Well, one of the bedrooms, I turned into a golf simulator room. And I bought a golf simulator. And it's the absolute best golf simulator on the market. And I'm going to start a golf YouTube channel. And on that golf YouTube channel, it'll be about simulated golf and real life golf. Me and simulated golf and real life golf. And that YouTube channel, I believe inside a year, maybe it might take 2, and that's fine, will completely pay for that mortgage payment on that house. So how can I turn every expense into a profit center? So now, here's the thing. It's not necessarily about, I've got to become this other person. Like, you may ask that question, how can I turn this expense into a profit center? You may ask that question and never find an answer. But if you don't ask the question, I can guarantee you ain't going to find an answer. Does that make sense? And so, like, it's interesting that there are millions of women around the world who cook, but Rachel Ray turned it into millions of dollars. There are millions of people who are curious, but Oprah Winfrey turned it into billions of dollars. It's wild to me. It's wild to me that there are television shows about people going and bidding on people's abandoned storage units and their junk. Television shows. Figure out how you can take some of the things that you already do anyway and turn them into a profit center. I call that an anyway offer. And so, if you will apply the 4 principles from this week's video, the 3 principles from last week's video, and you will start adapting and adopting those mindsets can make you millions. And they may or may not, but at least you've given yourself a chance. It's kind of like when I'm playing golf and I'm rolling a putt. A putt that comes up short or a breaking putt that is below the hole has no chance of going in. I'm not saying you're going to make millions of dollars. Here's what I'm saying. It might be worth your while to give yourself a chance. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. Bye for now.